What if you could keep just 3 simple directing tips in mind that would help you express the emotions that you want your audience to feel in a way that also keeps them interested and your crew cooperative? James Cameron said,
"Be a director. Pick up a camera, shoot something, no matter how small, no matter how cheesy, no matter whether your friends and your sister star in it, put your name on it as director. Now you're a director."
So the question is why don't people just automatically listen to us? Stick with me, because if you watch to the end of this video, these 3 tips will help you keep your team and audience on board, even if you're not Mr. Cameron and don't have the money to pay them. How many times have we heard the conversation that goes something like this?
Why is Michael Bay such a successful director?
The answer is actually rather simple. Though he might not have the most coherent storylines,
Michael Bay presents Explosions!
he knows how to get a lot of people to keep their butts in their seats.
He has an imagination the likes of which I've never seen. And he knows how to do it and what's gonna keep you always on edge.
From one moment to the next. How does he do it? Well, in order to answer that, we have to actually ask, what is the purpose of a director to begin with? The point of a director is to deliver a particular vision of a story, your vision. The result of that vision is going to be emotion. Emotion is also something a keen director masters in dealing with their crews, because it's the most important reason why people actually work with you. Anything tied to something meaningful gives us a deep sense of purpose. Doing something we feel really purposeful about gives us good emotions. So being a master of emotion in both story and people earns the trust of your crew and your audience, because you deliver vibes that people appreciate at every level. So then how does Michael Bay keep all those butts in those seats? He digs up emotion. Yes, those touchy-feely things inside of us that, like it or not, keep us glued to the edge. Whether it's through music, sound, color, sick camera direction, performance, or repeated explosions. He is selling extremely heightened emotions from one moment to the next. The importance of emotion rings true for all directors, whether it's Michael Bay, Mr. Darren Aronofsky, or you. And it doesn't matter whether your film is mainstream or art house, but how do we find the emotion we want the audience to feel? Here are some things that I ask myself to keep the juices flowing. I try thinking about why I'm inspired to tell this story. I ask, what's the message of the story and what emotion helps sell that best? I think how a particular moment might make you feel, and then decide if that's the right emotion for the audience to be feeling at that moment. And I feel that films are a lot like music in this way, because it's more exciting if you juxtapose one strong emotion against its opposite. It's sort of also like lighting contrast or color contrast. Here's my take on a film I'm prepping to direct. What inspired me to tell this story? It made me feel a deep sense of angst and sadness, but also hope and love. What's the message of the story and the emotion that helps me achieve its impact best? Well, the message is that love is divine, and I think the emotions that help sell the best are grief and desire. And that's because anytime I've felt unworthy of love, it conjured this sense of hope that only something heavenly could fulfill. And that's what I want the audience to feel, that sense of divinity in beautiful relationships. How do particular moments make me feel, and are they right? From moment to moment, I find the scene is exciting, playful, heartfelt, sad, and hopeful. And yes, I do think that those are the right feelings. Little secret, I'm also writing this myself, so I'm sort of baking in my intentions ahead of time. But as director, you get to make those decisions yourself. In fact, pro tip for keeping track of the emotional points throughout the story. When I prep a script, I write acting suggestions on one side, which is pretty normal, but then on the other, I add my emotion that I want the audience to be feeling, so I can track if I'm getting what I need as we shoot. And that also helps me to see if there's contrast between each moment. Once you've identified the emotions you want to convey, it's time to deliver on those emotions, which brings us to tip number 2. I'm Raymond Cinemato. I'm a producer who works for Disney ABC in Los Angeles, California, in their network news division. So shows like Good Morning America, World News 2020 Nightline. But I went to school for directing, and all the projects that I work on outside of ABC and Disney are directing and writing. A lot of that stuff is like fun stuff that I do for myself and stories that I'm developing. But that's what everything here is about. So if that sort of hybrid experience is something that you think would be interesting to learn from or be a part of, that's what I'm trying to create here. So I hope that you join me for the ride. Let's get on with this information, and if at the end you guys think that it's worth it, give us a subscribe.
Which one is it? You must choose. But choose wisely.
Ah, yes, good decisions. Those elusive things we ask our friends to help us with after a bad breakup we haven't come to terms with yet. They're important because they help us instill confidence in those around us and earn the trust of our cohorts. It's an obvious tip, but somehow I still manage to screw it up from time to time. So I constantly ask myself, how do I make good decisions? Just so I foolproof myself along the way. I find that taking the time to deepen my understanding of my assets, no matter how obvious they are, helps me know where I can push and pull things, and it gives everything a secondary purpose. The team becomes a repository of solutions, and the tools and locations can be used in unexpected ways. And the thing is that, as obvious as this is, I somehow will manage to screw this up if I don't actually take the time to re-review those things. Obvious as it may be, too often I see people plan a movie that goes way beyond the resources they have, and if they'd just taken some time to rework the script, maybe the presentation a little bit, they could have accommodated their limitations better and made their film look better. So I like to think about the cameras I can get my hands on, the audio, the lighting, all the fun stuff that filmmakers like to think about. Most of the time you have to work with people too. So who are the best people you have access to? Who are they? Why do they want to work on this project with you? What will they get out of it? Remember, you're asking them to trade their time and expertise they could be putting into something else. And if they do sign on, what specific talent do they have that you're going to take advantage of? I find that when I clearly describe what experience I want our audience to have and how their help ties directly to that experience, it actually makes them a lot more excited to jump on board because, again, it ties why they're there to that. It gives them that sense of purpose. And then also kind of pretty dang important is could you work with this person even if things went south? Because they will. And then just literally take that sort of approach to things and do it for everything. Locations is like the next big thing you're going to want to do that for. Now, let me give you an example. Let's pretend we're shooting a scene that's supposed to feel warm and say that this person loves that person, right? Let's also say that the scene was planned to be shot in a bedroom. Oh no, the location fell through. Whatever are we to do? A moment that says warm and loving doesn't have to take place in the bedroom. Now, obviously, that's like what you're coming to, but what the solution is might be a little bit harder to actually get. Thankfully, George the crafty guy has a freezing cold sidewalk by his house that you can shoot on. Now, the warmth that was going to be conveyed through Bob the DP's amber lights can now be conveyed through his close-up lens as the man wraps a warm fuzzy jacket around the girl he loves on that freezing cold sidewalk. Yes, Bob the DP and you could have thought of the lenses. Yes, maybe you thought of the jackets, but you know what? You didn't know that freaking George, the crafty guy, had a sidewalk available. Good thing you took the time to understand George, the crafty guy. Otherwise, he might not have cared enough to go that extra mile. But wait, just knowing Bob doesn't inspire him. It takes rapport. Well, I'm so glad you asked because that takes us right into how to communicate lovingly with your team in tip number 3.
Who here's a key grip?
You. Hit that director in the face. Really fucking hard.
No one's gonna question you when you talk like a boss. I mean, talking like a real boss. The kind of boss you wish you had most of the time. Let's face it, a good boss doesn't always tell us what we want to hear. As the boss, you have to get the shots and keep your crew together. So nailing how to talk is actually super important. Why did I say that at that moment? If you treat them like the boss you wish you had most of the time, you'll earn their trust, and Bob the crafty guy will give you that extra mile when you need it. So no, don't use the key grip to help you punch up your points. Shameless. Now, as for the point I'm trying to punch up, dude, I'm so shameless. You can start talking like a boss by always including the word, I'm proud of this one, because. Do this because it forces you to clarify why you chose something, which gives them a sense of purpose. It clarifies things and it helps them understand why you might be asking them to do something that they would otherwise not want to, like that cold night. For example, we're going to shoot on a cold night because we need the fog from our mouths to sell the emotion. And here's a pro tip for when we have to deal with the people who are just a little extra reluctant. Have more than one way of explaining why, because having multiple ways of explaining the same point is really helpful in getting you to understand your point even better, and then also making it so that they can relate to it. For example, we're going to shoot on a cold night because earlier in the film, the characters talked about how the fog from their mouths reminds them of the warmth that they feel for each other. And in this scene, it's really the only thing keeping them together after the argument that they've had. Another example that makes sense in the story is we're also going to shoot on a cold night because the motif of warmth establishes togetherness, but this is the part of the story when everything seems lost, so we need to see them completely engulfed by that painful cold. And here's another important tip. Always speak in terms of the subject, not the person. You aren't getting the shot versus the shot isn't right. Why can't you emote more versus that's not the correct level of emotion? And if I'm being completely honest, my next point is sometimes difficult to navigate when you are the boss and you have to make confident decisions and people disagree about what confidence looks like. I could talk endlessly about my philosophy on that. I'll save it for another video, but being humble, especially when you communicate. We don't have all the answers. The people around us might know something that we don't, but then they might also not. That humility is going to help us navigate all of those situations, because in our humility, we accept that we don't know one way or another, and we're just making the best calls that we can with the information at hand. And a big part of that humility is communicating why we're choosing the direction. We are always explaining and always justifying. We are not above explaining as much as we absolutely need to in order for people to work with us. And be honest, don't try to manipulate people. I know directors are sometimes famous for tricking actors into performances, but I feel like you can only do that once. And they'll appreciate your candor, even if it's hard for them to hear it or for you to say it. Neil Gaiman said that
Story is anything fictional that keeps you turning the pages and doesn't leave you feeling cheated at the end.
whether you're going to pull a Michael Bay, an art house mind trip, or your own new take on the medium, your job is to deliver an emotional experience that people will stick around for, and when they do finally leave feeling something meaningful. And that goes for your crew and your audience. And like any successful journey in art, it really is about the people you do it with. If you enjoyed this video and want to have me visit your feed, I would love to do that for you. I would just need you to click the subscribe button and the notification bell if you think that that's something you'd be interested in, because then you'll be alerted when new videos come out. I post weekly about things relating to my experience in the film industry, working on projects, and sometimes shorts and skits. I've got one big project coming up in the next couple months, which I touched on earlier, that is going to include the film when it's done, but also like all of the stuff that leads up to the film, like the writing, the directing, bringing people on board. I mean, you're catching me at a time where I haven't like even gotten the team together yet. So you're gonna see the whole process from beginning to end on this channel. So if you're into that, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell so that it doesn't get buried, because my channel's still really small and new, so it's very likely that you wouldn't necessarily get the notification. It only goes out to like 25% of my audience, I think. So I'm Raymond Cinemato. I hope you guys had a great time and found this video helpful. I'll catch you all in next week's video.